It wasn't just that Pablo Escobar peddled tons and tons of narcotics around the world, seemingly without fear of being caught, which made him so terrifying, or the intimidation and extreme violence he used to maintain control of his evil empire, or even that this drug lord became richer and more powerful than Colombia, the country he lived in. The scariest thing about Pablo Escobar is that so many people revered him as a hero, and still do, even though it's 20 years since he was killed. Colombia is slowly recovering from the deadly narco wars of the 80s and 90s, and Escobar's son, Juan Pablo Escobar, is slowly starting to make sense of life with the megalomaniac he called Dad. For Juan Pablo Escobar, the story of his father is the story of two men. What is your fondest memory, your warmest memory of this place?
I remember some of my birthday parties with my father and all my family together, living very happy times.
Pablo Escobar, the one-time narco king and most wanted man on the planet, was certainly a cold and calculating killer. But to his family, he was also a warm and loving man.
I was willing to give my life for him. That's how deeply I love him.
Considering the life he gave you, the life on the run, the threats to your life, the poverty eventually, is there a part of you that also hates him?
No, there's no chance I could hate my father.
Walking through the ruins of the Escobar family home is to go back to a time that is almost inconceivable for its riches and violence. Pablo Escobar was making ridiculous money, $420 million each week, by smuggling cocaine from the jungles of Colombia to the bright lights of Miami. It made him God here, all-powerful and all-giving, a charismatic, modern-day Robin Hood to the country's poorest, building soccer fields, churches, even an entire suburb to house the homeless. When you were enjoying the riches of your family, did that make you feel that your father's work, his criminal work, was okay?
No, because I didn't know exactly what he does. He was telling me when I was 7 years old, he told me after he killed the minister, and when we went to Panama, he told me that he was a bandit. So a man who gives you love every day tells you he's a bandit, it's difficult to judge him.
But Escobar was a megalomaniac, pursuing political power with a private army of 3,000 assassins known as sicarios. In the 80s and early 90s, at the height of his drug running and war on anyone who dared defy him, the streets of his home city, Medellin, were bathed in blood.
We killed 500 police officers. 800 were injured. It was war.
Juan Jairo Velasquez, known as Popeye, was Escobar's most lethal sicario, serving 23 years in jail for personally killing 250 people. On Escobar's command, he admits to ordering the deaths of thousands more. Why are you so proud of all this blood on your hands?
I'm not proud. Pablo Escobar was not a boss. He was a religion.
In the name of his religion, Escobar brazenly had his political opponents assassinated. He brought down a passenger jet with 110 people on board to target one man, who wasn't even on the plane. And he funded an attack on Colombia's Justice Palace, the highest court in the land, to simply destroy evidence against him. That day, 120 people were killed, including 11 Supreme Court judges.
People remember that event as an Holocaust.
A Holocaust.
Holocaust, yeah.
Did your father ever express any regret?
And I don't think he expressed any regret at all
About anything?
about anything. He thought he was doing the right thing.
There was nothing low profile or low key about Pablo Escobar. Hacienda Nápoles, his 20 square kilometre country estate, was a tribute to excess. Here he had 3 zoos filled with exotic and often stolen animals, never-ending parties, and too many boys' toys to ever play with. But this was not just a fun retreat for his family and friends. This was the headquarters for his drug-running and terrorist campaign. What was it like as a kid to spend time there?
It was like living in Disneyland. Giraffes, elephants, everything. A lot of motorcycles, an airstrip, and a lot of things to do, and a lot of money to spend.
Today, Hacienda Nápoles is a strange theme park. The surreal has replaced the opulence created and enjoyed here by the Escobars. It's now filled in, but walking the edge of the pool, one can imagine the young Escobars swimming and playing together. And from the old foundations of the house, there's the view of the disused tennis court. And their private runway, the delivery point for drugs, cash, and even call girls. All reminders of a vast fortune, all evidence of a fallen empire. Its destruction was set when Escobar tried to legitimise his wealth and power by becoming a politician. What do you think of your father's decision to try to enter politics?
His worst decision in life, because once he ran into politics, everyone pay attention to him.
Put the focus, the spotlight
Yes,
on
of
you
course.
as a family and on him.
If he didn't do that, I think he would be alive.
With his political ambitions thwarted, Escobar returned to violence to bully the government into dropping its extradition treaty with the US. It worked. And so, as agreed, Escobar turned himself in. But in true Escobar fashion, he was jailed in a prison he built for himself, where his assassins were his prison guards, where his son and whoever else could visit whenever they wanted.
We have roulettes and a lot of games for them. It was a very modern prison.
It wasn't a prison at all.
Yeah, like a 5-star hotel.
It's called La Catedral, the cathedral, an unholy place with a bird's-eye view of Medellin. devoted to Escobar's passions, for it truly was his fiefdom.
That is thanks to corruption and also thanks to fear.
Which your father wielded both very well.
Yeah, he offered, if you want to receive my money, you can take it. If you don't, you're going to receive bullets. Choose.
Ultimately, Escobar chose a path that would lead to his own destruction. Escaping from La Catedral, but still waging war, he was quickly running out of friends, hiding spots, and money. In those last days of your father's life, did your father expect to die?
Always. We talk about dying every time, every day. We knew that it was going to come sooner than later.
December 2nd, 1993, the day after his 44th birthday, an ever more isolated and desperate Pablo Escobar rang his 16-year-old son repeatedly. When did you last speak to him?
10 minutes before he died. He always told me that telephone is death, and that's why he called. So he killed himself.
By tracing his phone signal, police tracked Escobar to the building he was calling from. The final showdown was a shootout on a rooftop. A disheveled Escobar was wounded in his shoulder and leg, but one Pablo believes his father made his own final escape. And they found a third bullet?
Yeah, in his own ear, where he always told me he will put his bullet in.
So you believe that he committed suicide twice that day, by ringing you
Of course.
and by shooting himself in the head?
Of course.
Juan was told by a journalist that his father was dead. His immediate response was to make this threat. In that moment, did you want to kill everyone?
Yeah, in that moment, yes. The 10 first minutes, yes. And that's why 10 minutes after that, I called the press and I tell that I will never do anything to continue my father's steps. And that's the second threat, peace. And that's the only one that I've been living every day since then.
To save their lives, Juan Pablo and his family gave all they had to his father's enemies, left the country and changed their names.
We changed our identities. It was the only way. When we changed our names, the next day we were free.
For Popeye, Escobar's most trusted assassin, the narco wars are to be embraced, not shunned. And like Escobar, Popeye is a hero in Colombia's comunas. The dangerous and ramshackle communities that house the city's poor and are a haven for criminals. You have no shame in trading on the name or notoriety of Pablo Escobar. Instead of hiding in shame for what you've done, you are trading on that.
I'm not ashamed of what I did. I have to make a living. So I have a choice of making a living with a weapon in my hand or by keeping Pablo Escobar's memory alive.
Memories are all that's left. Stately homes and vast apartments now abandoned and in disrepair.
I think I learned how to swim in this pool.
It was an extraordinary life, and one that Juan has now written about in his memoir called My Father. He now lives in Argentina and is an architect who's designed a life of peace by seeking forgiveness from the families of his father's victims. He can't deny the hatred engendered by Pablo Escobar, but nor can he reject the love he feels for the man who will always be his father. You talk about the greatest prize being anonymity. Why have you given that up?
No, I'm no longer hiding because I don't want to hide. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't do any harm to anybody. I'm not proud of his violence, but I am proud of his love for me and to my mother and sister. And everybody's right if they want to love him because he made some things that make you love him and some things that make you hate him. That's my father.